Today, let's talk about my Alaskan cruise last week on the Magic. That's coming up on this episode 515 of WW Prep to Go. Hello and welcome to WW Prep to Go. We talk strategy and ideas for people planning their Disney trips. I'm your host, Shannon Albert from WDWPrepSchool.com. Thank you for being here for episode 515. I am recording this in between an Alaskan cruise last week and headed to Disney World. So as soon as I get done hitting publish on this, I will be packing because I have a 3 a.m. alarm to head to Florida for 8 days. So you will get those updates after you get this episode. You'll get those daily updates like you always do during my trips. But I wanted to take some time today to recap it before I move on to the Disney World stuff because Lord knows there's a lot going on in Florida and I wanted to give this the time that it deserves. Before I jump into that, a reminder to follow on social media. And if you want to be a trip report guest, there's only one way to do that, and that is to leave a SpeakPipe voicemail where you leave the details of your trip. And if it works out in the schedule, then somebody on my team will reach out to you and get your pre-trip and post-trip scheduled so that we can chat about it. We don't accept anything via email, DM, etc. All right, that's my usual administrative stuff. So let's dive into the actual trip last week. So if you've been around for a few years, you may remember that I went on an Alaskan cruise in May of 2023, and it was one of my favorite trips of all time. When I was younger, I used to say, I can't imagine paying money to be cold, and now I want to pay money to be cold because I live in such a hot place. But also, the beauty is so hard to match. Like you are just surrounded by it the whole time. When you do Caribbean cruises, you're out in the open ocean a lot without a view for a lot of it, unless it's a port day. But Alaskan cruises are totally different because you get views no matter which side of the ship you're on the whole time. And it is so beautiful. It's just crisp and clean and gorgeous. And so it just is a whole different kind of trip. And I was excited to go back, especially because there was a weird itinerary available that was less expensive. So the cruise that I went on last week on the Magic, my previous one was on the Wonder. This was the Magic's very first cruise out of Alaska. This was a 5-day itinerary, or 5-night itinerary. And it's the only one of the season. So my cruise isn't going to be typical of any other cruises this year. But that meant that it was less expensive. And it also gave us what we wanted, which is one stop, which was Ketchikan. Last time we didn't have hardly any time in Ketchikan because we did an excursion that ended up not being great. And so this time we were like, okay, what we really want is time in Vancouver and we want some time in Ketchikan, and doing a 5-night itinerary that only stopped in Ketchikan was going to give us that. So that's why we booked it. But every other cruise, if you are going or debating going, it's going to be on the Magic or the Wonder, and it's going to be a 7-night, and you're going to have 3 stops: Juneau, Skagway, and Ketchikan. And those are all, great stops. We enjoyed them a few years ago. So anyway, this was advantageous to us. And I was thinking it wouldn't be appealing to a lot of people because it only has the one stop. And I thought people would want to book the longer ones. But our cruise was decently full. And we heard from families with little ones that this was preferable to them because the ports are not super friendly to little kids, or at least a lot of the excursions aren't. And so I thought that was pretty smart too, is I'm only going to go on this 5-night itinerary because we can't do a lot of the excursions yet. And so, we did end up with families with little ones. So that was good. And so anyway, I'm just giving that as kind of a caveat because if you are going on an Alaskan cruise, this won't be exactly how yours works. So having said that, we did go to Vancouver a few days before. And if your schedule and budget allow for it, I highly, highly, highly recommend it. It is one of my regrets from the last Alaskan cruise is that we didn't allow enough time in Vancouver. We literally just came in the day before and had like an afternoon, evening, and that was it. But Vancouver, as it turns out, is one of my very favorite cities I've ever been to. And I've done a fair amount of travel around the world. And so that really adds to it. And we overheard some people at lunch one day say, it feels like we're having a mini vacation before a vacation. And I thought, yeah, that's exactly it. It feels like we have a whole, part one before we even get on the ship. And so that was really great because Vancouver is so walkable and gorgeous, and there's so much to do. There's good food, beautiful scenery, etc. And so that was a good choice and highly recommended if you can. So we did get in and spent 3 nights in Vancouver before the cruise. Our day one, we stayed at the Sheraton that was a little less than a mile from the cruise port, but we walked our first day down to the cruise port, and then we just followed the seawall and kept going to Stanley Park. And so by 11:30 a.m., we had 12,000 steps because it's just so easy to do there. It was just mild weather, lots of walking. And so that was sort of the first part of that day. And then the second day we walked to Granville Island, which is like where our hotel was kind of in the middle of the two things. It was in the middle between the cruise port and Granville Island. And it's kind of this market area where there's lots of fun shops and dining and all that sort of thing. So we did a lot of walking on day 2 to go and do that. We also went up, and there's a viewing area that you can pay to go up to get a 360 view of Vancouver. We went to an area of town called Gastown, which has lots of live entertainment and food, and there's a steam clock. So there's plenty to do to fill some time there, and we totally soaked it all in while we could. So highly recommend that. We loved our hotel. It was great service. They have lights up year round, like Christmas lights year round at night. And I can't say enough about the service. It was fantastic. We had good views. We used Marriott points to pay for it. There's a lot of hotels in that area. So, you're going to have a lot of choices if you are looking. Last time we stayed at the Pan Pacific, I think it's called, and it's literally attached to the cruise terminal. And it's so in cahoots with the cruise terminal itself that they came and got our bags out of our room and delivered them to the ship for us. But this time we stayed somewhere where we could use Marriott points just to make the trip more affordable, because right now, prices are so high for everything. We're doing what we can to keep the costs down. But anyway, it was a good hotel. If you have Marriott points, I would highly recommend it. But you do have a lot of choices in this area because there's a lot of hotels. So anyway, had a great time in Vancouver. Highly suggest taking some time to visit if you can, if you happen to be going on an Alaskan cruise. And then it was time to go on the cruise itself. Now, this is my 4th time, I think it is, on the Magic. And my history on the Magic has been really mixed. I think episode 394, which was in January of 2024, is called About My Least Favorite DCL Cruise. And it was about the Magic. So I have mixed reviews. After that, I did have an episode called My Redemption Cruise on the Magic, because my next one after that was good. But my feelings about the Magic itself are mixed, which is very interesting because the Wonder is one of my favorite ships, and they are almost identical, but I have very different feelings about them. And so that is kind of interesting. Some people absolutely love the Magic. It's their favorite. And, that's it's an OG. So I think some people, they cruised it early on, and that's kind of their home ship, if you will. And I think the Wonder is that for me. And I think it comes down to a couple of factors. One is service. I think the crew on the Wonder is the best of all the ships I've been on. And the second for me is food. I think the food on the Wonder is consistently good, and the Magic is more mixed. So, it's those two things can really change it up. But a couple of things that are better on the Magic and might make people like it more. I think the shows are better on the Magic, including they have a Tangled show that is considered one of the best in the DCL fleet. And they have an additional water slide. They have a plunge water slide that the Wonder doesn't have. Now, listen, on the Alaskan cruises, the water slides are maybe not going to factor in as much for you, but there were plenty of people going on them. But those two things I think are better on the Magic, but I think the service and food are better on the Wonder. So, whichever one's most important to you, both are sailing out of Alaska this summer. So you have choices there. Let's see. The check-in process at the terminal this time was very weird. I guess this might be the new norm, but a lot of people that were on our ship were frequent cruisers, and a lot of us were like, "That was super strange." It just was a lot of different steps, and they gave us wristbands to show that we had like completed certain steps, and then we just sat in the terminal for a really long time before getting on the ship. I'm not sure, if that was a new procedure at the cruise terminal there. I'm not sure what's going on, but it was a lot of steps. So I would just give yourself plenty of time. I had a 10:30 port arrival time. We arrived at 10:15 and then didn't get on the ship until almost noon. So, it took a little bit of time. It was a little bit confusing, but we got there. So once on the ship, we did go to the sit down restaurant. I used to be a diehard buffet person, like go to Cabanas, go to Marceline Market right away because it's just the easiest to like get your food the fastest. But if you have an earlier port arrival time, the sit down restaurant is often more peaceful because there's nobody in there. It's quiet. Versus the buffet, which can be quite busy. If you have a later port arrival time, sometimes by the time you get to the sit down restaurant, it can be quite full. But I'm platinum now, so usually my port arrival time is going to be pretty early. So we did go to the sit down restaurant. In this case, it was Animator's Palette. And on this particular day, we did the sit down restaurant Animator's Palette. And then I opened the DCL app to see what our dining rotation was on our muster drill location. And they were both also Animator's Palette. So hit Animator's Palette 3 times in one day on that first day. But it's, what a great space to have to repeat. It's so charming every single time. So anyway, we ended up doing the sit down there, and then rooms were ready at 1:30. This was a GTY booking. And if you're not familiar, that means that you book a certain category, but not a certain stateroom. So usually when you book a Disney cruise, you pick your exact stateroom, but for a less expensive option, you can book what is called, I think it's called guaranteed, GTY. And these aren't always available, but this is sometimes available. And that means that you don't know which stateroom you're going to get, but Disney's going to assign it. And I've actually done this twice, and they were both on the Magic. So I knew I was going to end up with an ocean view room with veranda. Highly recommend. The veranda is never more worth it than on the Alaskan cruises because you have views the whole time. So I would definitely include that because you can just sit on your veranda the whole time and look out if you want. And so we ended up on the 5th deck. 5626, I think was the number. I've never been on the 5th deck. I've been on 2 and 7 and 8 and, different levels, never 5. And what's interesting about 5 is that it's the first time I've been on a deck that wasn't pure staterooms. So this deck is where like the kids clubs are. It's also where the Buena Vista movie theater is. So it's a lot of usable spaces but some of it is staterooms. And so it was actually very quiet because there just wasn't a lot of people down on our end. But once you left the hallway where the staterooms were, then of course you encountered the public going to movie theater and that kind of stuff. But we were right by the movie theater and we kind of enjoyed smelling the popcorn and everything they have there. So I didn't mind being there. However, it was at the back of the ship, aft, and I do prefer to be in the middle. On the 5th deck, I don't think you can be in the middle. But if I'm choosing the stateroom, the exact stateroom myself, I'm going to choose something in the middle because when there was some motion, we were definitely feeling it in the room. Whereas in the middle, you can feel it a lot less. So I didn't mind it, and not a bad assignment for being, guaranteed and being able to save some money that way. We did opt to not request a private table. We were a party of 2, and I never request a private table because Disney will usually assign you with people that they think you are going to have things in common with, or that you are going to get along with well at dinner, and that's always worked out. So we were a party of 2 women, and then we got paired with 2 other parties of 2 women. One was an adult daughter and her mother, and the other were 2 women who actually are Disney World cast members. And so it was great because we had 2 cast members, we had me, and then we had a travel agent was in the other pairing. And so it was a good group, and I liked meeting people this way. And so that was beneficial. I know some people might want to do their own private table. We met a couple when we were waiting to board. that said that they did request a private table because she has food allergies that make ordering more tricky and that the food takes longer. And so she doesn't want to be put with other people and have her food take so long, which is totally valid, totally understand that. But I don't mind being put with other people. So this is probably my third time that I've done this where I've been assigned a table with others, and it kind of works out well. Disney does a pretty good job putting people together. So I quite liked doing that. So that first night we, had this group of 6 at a table. We were all kind of just getting to know each other, and we were an animator's palette. And so that was nice. And then our first day was a day at sea, and our last day was a day at sea. And I have found that this is my preference for an itinerary. The DCL site, when you're searching for cruise itineraries, doesn't let you search by this, but I wish they did, because I love 5-night cruises. For me personally, 5 nights is my minimum and maximum. If it's less than 5, I feel like I haven't quite settled in. If it's more than 5, I feel like I am itching to get off the ship. Most people prefer longer. That's just my preference. 5 nights. I want 5 nights, and I want the first and last days to be days at sea, because it just feels less hectic, because there's a lot going on with embarkation day. So then I want it to be followed by a day at sea. And then there's a lot that you have to do on your last day on the ship, like, settling your bill, getting your stuff packed, all that. And I want that to be a day at sea. I don't want to have to be thinking about a port day as well. And this itinerary happened to have that. And then 2 days in the middle where we had things going on that were not just regular days at sea. The first of those was Glacier Viewing Day. And I think a lot of people, including me before my first Alaskan cruise, thought of a Glacier Viewing Day as a day at sea, because you don't go to a port, you just stay on the ship. However, it is so action-packed that it deserves its own mention, and it's not like a regular day at sea. And I think nothing really encapsulates a Disney Alaskan cruise more than Glacier Viewing Day. And that's because it is both a chance to view glaciers, but also Disney does different things on this day, including special characters, and it is a Frozen theme night. They don't do a pirate night, they do a Frozen theme night on these Alaskan cruises. So first thing in the morning on Glacier Viewing Day, we went and got on the top deck 10, and got in line to meet Mickey. And when we got in line, it was about, I think it was 8:40, and it was 9 a.m. meeting time. I knew there was going to be a line when we got there, and ended up taking about an hour to meet Mickey. He's in a special outfit. He's in a yellow rain gear, and it's just super cute. It's very popular. And I wanted to go to the first scheduled character meet, Mickey meet, because I knew that if the line got cut off, or if the weather, because last time we were there, it started sleeting and they had to move Mickey inside. I wanted multiple chances to try to meet him throughout the day if possible. But we got in line at 8:40, and at 9:40 or so is when we actually met him. This is when the layers come in really handy, because as you get north from Vancouver and get into the glaciers and the ports and stuff, it gets colder and colder. And we were outside, and it had started to kind of drizzle a little bit, windy. There was actually quite a lot of fog on this day. And so we were able to put on all of our layers, hats, gloves, all of that, and be comfortable while we were waiting to meet Mickey. There's also there's Donald and Daisy. Donald and Daisy are wearing buffalo plaid outfits, and Daisy actually has on little Uggs. It is so cute. And they have hot drinks for sale up on the deck. There's a cup that you can buy for $22 on this day. There's just stuff going on the top deck. But the characters have very long lines. So I do recommend it in the morning. Not only is it good to get in there in case something happens, you have multiple chances throughout the day, but also the morning is before you get to the glacier. So it's sort of, scheduling your day. I would slate the morning for the characters, because around early afternoon, you'll probably reach the glacier, and you're going to want to spend some time outside viewing the glacier. Now, the last Alaskan cruise I did, we did book the Glacier Viewing excursion, which is a smaller boat pulls up to the ship, and the people that have booked it get off of the ship, the Disney ship, onto this smaller boat, and they go and take you close to the glacier. And it gives you lots of photo opportunities. It's very competitive, and I also think it's very expensive. And so while I don't regret doing it last time, I wasn't interested in doing it this time because I was like, we're just going to be in our veranda and we'll take in the views on that day. We didn't get as close on the ship to the glacier this time as last time. You never know how it's going to go. But even if you don't have great views of the glacier, there's still great views to be had nearby. So we were on the veranda in the afternoon after meeting Mickey and Minnie in the morning. And I had a bottle of champagne. It was a free gift. When you're platinum, you get a free onboard gift. And I chose champagne. I ordered a cheese plate from room service. It is included with, just their normal room service menu. And then I brought a Bluetooth speaker and I kept it playing quiet music. Somebody in my comments on Instagram was like, I hate when people bring speakers. It's so disruptive. I'm like, nobody could hear it. I promise you. It was playing quiet music. And we also have binoculars. So we had our blankets on, bundled up, drinking champagne, having a cheese plate, enjoying the scenery on Glacier Day. I posted a reel of this because it was delightful. So that was our choice for what to do on Glacier Day. And then after that, it was frozen night on the ship. I guess the whole day is kind of frozen day, but frozen night on the ship. And they have like a frozen sing along that is out on the pool deck, and they have a frozen themed menu. So on the Caribbean cruises or most Disney cruises, they have a pirate night. And so all the dining rooms have a pirate themed menu, but on these, it's a frozen themed menu. And so they have different frozen things available on this day. And you can choose to get dressed up or not get dressed up. They don't give out the like scarf handkerchief things like they do on Pirate Night on the ships, but you can dress up for Frozen Night. We chose to dress as Anna and Elsa, but we had a dinner at Palo. A meal at Palo is also included when you're platinum. So when you're platinum, you get a gift that is delivered to your room. And that's the champagne that I ordered. And then you also get one Palo meal. So as a way to make this trip more affordable, I hadn't booked any excursions and I only booked Palo dinner because I knew it was included with the platinum status. And so we had that on Glacier Viewing night, but I also wanted to participate in the Frozen theme. And so we addressed as Anna and Elsa to participate, but it had to be Palo friendly because they have, a dress code. So it was kind of like dressy Elsa, dressy Anna, and we went. And a benefit to booking on this day, in addition to not having to eat the Frozen themed menu that's in the rotational dining rooms, is that you still have the same views on Glacier Viewing Day. So Palo is full of windows, and we were seated right next to the window, and we had all of these amazing views the whole day. So we had the views when we were on deck 10 and we were meeting characters in the morning. We had the views from our veranda when we were just doing the Glacier Viewing stuff from our room. And we had them at dinner because we booked Palo dinner and had the views and the windows there. I am a person that prefers Palo dinner over Palo brunch unless there's a group. But if there's two people, I just can't do Palo brunch. It's way too much food. And people always say, then don't order that much food. And I totally understand, but they do pressure you a lot because there's so many choices that are included with your Palo brunch. And in our group last month on the Patron cruise, half of them had done Palo brunch and they were able to have a private room together and all share the different entrees. And I think that's the only way I would do Palo brunch again is if there was a group, because it's too much food, overwhelms me. And so Palo dinner is better. And I got the fixed menu. It's $55 if you pay out of pocket. Do not get the wine pairing though. I love a fixed menu where it has wine pairings, but it's an additional $90 just for the wine pairings, and it's 3 ounces of wine with 4 courses. So for 12 ounces of wine, you're paying $90. Just get a bottle of wine and split it. That's what we ended up doing. So it was just delightful. I do like booking an early Palo dinner. Like we were either the first or second people in the dining room because you do have a better chance of being seated at the window. So 6 p.m. dinner, and our rotational dining time this time was 8:15, and that's too late for me. I really don't like late dining because I don't want my first bite of food for dinner at 8:30, but I was waitlisted for main dining and couldn't get it. So our normal rotational dining was 8:15, but on Palo dinner night, it was 6 p.m. So that just worked better. Plus we got windows and, that was nice. So Really liked the Palo dinner on this particular day. I think it was sort of accidentally smart of me to book it on this day because the views ended up being amazing. The day after was Ketchikan, and the last time we did an Alaskan cruise, we ended up booking the Misty Fjords excursion, which was not good. I really, really disliked it a lot, and it's because it's just really boring. Like, it takes hours and there's nothing to do, and then once you get there, you just have, like, views for a little bit and turn around. I just thought it was a complete waste of a port day. This time we only had 5 hours in the port. We were scheduled to be in Ketchikan from 2 o'clock to 7:45, and we didn't get off the ship till 3 because there were delays. So that was a little bit frustrating. But it was also we weren't the only ones that were frustrated because the entire third deck where we exited was full of people waiting to get off the ship. I think that after days on the ship, we were just all itching to like walk around and not have ship movement for a little while. And there were delays. So we all finally got off the ship. It was around 3 o'clock. And our plan was to just walk around Ketchikan and enjoy kind of our own crawl. We wanted to get some food. We had halibut that was delicious and local beers and different things. We went to 4 different places and just really enjoyed walking around Ketchikan and seeing all different, places and eating different local food. It was great. So we really enjoyed that. But we did have to make a choice about how we were going to spend our evening because the Tangled show was scheduled on this evening. And so if you remember, I said that the Ketchikan time was scheduled through 7:45. And the first Tangled show was at 6 and the second one was at 8:15. So we had to make a choice. Are we going to cut our time in Ketchikan short to go back and see the first one? Or are we going to miss our dinner and see the second one? And I don't like that Disney does this. Like, they could have scheduled it on any other day. It's our only port day. And it really drives me crazy when they do this because to optimize the schedule for everyone, I just feel like it could have been a different day. So we chose to skip our rotational dining. So we had missed it the night before because of Palo dinner, and we were going to miss it the second night because we wanted to go see the Tangled show. And all of the eating and drinking we did in Ketchikan sort of served as our dinner. Plus, there's always room service and different quick service options on the boat. So we went from Ketchikan to the Tangled show, and that was our choice, but that just meant missing rotational dining 2 nights in a row. So we went to that, and that was good. I always like seeing the shows. So that was that. And so we kind of had 2 busier days in a row between Glacier Viewing and that. And then the last day was a day at sea. Perfect. I like that. So we had a chance to kind of pack and make sure that the tab looks good and get some stuff done before we headed off the ship. And so it's just more of a relaxing way to do it. On disembarkation day, I normally do express walk off immediately. Like, I'm ready to go at 7 a.m. And as soon as they say you can get off the ship, I'm going. However, our flight to leave wasn't until midnight. So we were not in any hurry to get off the ship. I've never done sit-down breakfast. I don't know if I've ever done breakfast of any kind on disembarkation day, but you can do a sit-down breakfast. It'll tell you in the app which restaurant and at what time. If you have main dining during the cruise, then your breakfast time is going to be an earlier time. This is the one time that the later dining time that we had throughout this cruise came in handy because it meant our breakfast time was a little bit later. I think it was like at 8 a.m. And so that timing worked out well for us. So we did go to the sit-down breakfast. FYI, they don't advertise that Cabanas is open, but in all of my last 5 cruises, I think Cabanas has been open for breakfast on the last day. So we went to the sit-down breakfast, which was Animator's Palette, another place, another visit to this restaurant. That was kind of the theme for this trip, was a lot of time in Animator's Palette. So we went to the sit-down breakfast, and that was great. Another chance to see our fantastic servers. Highly recommend Palo. He was a fantastic server for us. We gave him extra tips because we adored him so much. And so I really like hot breakfasts. I want real eggs, and I want a hot breakfast, some coffee. And so they let you put your luggage at the entrance, like in the hallway there, and then just sit down, and then you can grab it on the way out. And so at that point, we just walked off the ship essentially afterwards. And then because we had so much time before our flight, I had booked a day pass, and this was at the Radisson. There are a handful of hotels that have day passes. And so if you find yourself in this situation, and there were a lot of people in this situation, then you should research what the times are. So our day pass time was 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. So we took an Uber to get to the Radisson, which is adjacent to the airport. It's not in the airport, but it's adjacent. And we went there and spent 10 to 6, and they had an on-site restaurant where we could grab some lunch, and it is near the river, so we went and took a walk but also took a nap. And so it was a good way to spend the day. At 6 p.m., when it was time to go, they had a free shuttle that took us to the airport. And once we were in the airport, it was still too early for us to be able to check our bags because we were flying United, and I think it's 3 hours before they let you check your bags. So we headed to the Fairmont in the Vancouver airport, which is the hotel that is in the airport. And they have a great restaurant with live music. And it was the perfect way to spend a couple of hours and have our dinner because it had great views, watching planes come in and out, fantastic food, service, music, all of it. So that was a good choice to spend some time at the Fairmont restaurant. And then after that, it was finally a chance that we could check our bags and finally get rid of these heavy bags. I'm really struggling with my bags weighing too much, but I'm not sure how to fix it. We even did laundry this trip as a way to try to make the luggage a little bit lighter, and it's just so heavy. But we were able to check it at that point and then kill a couple of hours, just walking around the airport or just whatever, charging our devices and everything before our midnight flight, and then got home the next day because it was an overnight flight, obviously. So overall, a really great trip. But I think if I were choosing, a lot of people have asked, would you choose the Magic or the Wonder? And I think it really comes down to preferences. If you find yourself wanting to do Alaska, and now that there's 2 ships available, do you want service and better food on the Wonder, or do you want better shows and an extra water slide in the Magic? That really, to me, comes down to it. And as much as I like shows, it's one of my favorite parts about Disney cruises. I really, really like the Wonder. It just feels like my home ship, if that's a thing. And so that is probably what I would pick between the 2, but you might have a different preference, and I'm sure you'll have a great time either way because we had a good time on the Magic this time. So I think that is it. If you have any questions, feel free to DM or email, and I'll be happy to answer them. But I got to go pack for an 8-day stay at Disney World, so I'm going to leave it at that. That'll wrap up this episode of WDW Prep to Go. For more information, please check the show notes in your podcast app or head to the website, wdwprepschool.com. Click on podcast at the top, scroll down to episode 515. Until next time, I will see you on the site.